Hello, my friends. If you enjoy this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. I never liked motels. There was something about them. The faded neon signs, the smell of carpet cleaner mixed with something sour, the faint hum of the air conditioning that always sounded like whispering. But on that rainy night, I had no choice. My car had died somewhere outside of Amarillo, in the middle of a storm that made the sky feel like it was collapsing. The first motel I saw was a small, run-down place off the highway. Its sign flickered sporadically. "Welcome, travelers." The letters buzzed and fizzled like they were dying. I should have kept driving. I really should have. But I was soaked, exhausted, and the rain was turning the road into a black river. I pushed open the glass door, and the bell above it rang with a hollow, tinny sound. A man appeared behind the counter. He looked older than the paint on the walls, with a thin face and eyes that didn't quite focus. "Room?" I asked, trying to sound casual, though my voice cracked from the cold. "Room, yes," he said, tilting his head. "I have room 7, just down the hall." The hall smelled of mildew and something else I couldn't place, like metal and wet cardboard. The light flickered above me as I walked, making the shadows dance in ways that made my skin crawl. The door to room 7 looked normal, though it sagged slightly in its frame. I shrugged off the feeling of unease and inserted the key. The room was small, just a bed, a dresser, and a TV with a layer of dust so thick it looked like sand. I dropped my bag on the floor and ran the shower, letting the hot water chase the cold off my bones. After I got out, I noticed something strange. On the nightstand was a small notebook and a pen. I didn't remember seeing it before. Curiosity got the better of me. The first page had a single sentence written in neat, cramped handwriting. "Do not fall asleep." My heart skipped. A joke, I thought. Some previous guest's idea of fun. I laughed to myself, shaking my head, trying to dismiss it. But as the night wore on, I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. The storm outside worsened. Rain pounded against the window, and the wind made the building groan. I tried watching TV, but the static-filled screen seemed to pulse with shapes, faces, or maybe just shadows playing tricks. I turned it off. Silence settled in the room, and then I heard it. A soft whisper. At first, I thought it was the wind. Then I realized it was coming from the room itself, low, hissing, almost like a voice behind the walls. I froze. My eyes darted around the room. The shadows seemed deeper now, thicker, as if they had substance. I couldn't move. "Do not sleep," the voice repeated, clearer this time. I realized it wasn't coming from the walls. It was coming from under the bed. I backed away, my fingers gripping the notebook. The pen rolled off the nightstand and clattered to the floor. My instinct screamed at me to leave, but something, fear, curiosity, or madness, kept me there. I looked under the bed. Nothing. Just the dark space beneath, empty except for dust and some old socks. Relief washed over me, but it was short-lived. The TV turned on by itself. The screen was black, but the static buzzed in a rhythm that matched my heartbeat. And then I saw it. A face. Pale, gaunt, eyes black as coal, staring right at me from the screen. I stumbled backward. The notebook fell open on the bed. More words had appeared. "You should have left." Panic surged. I grabbed my bag, my keys, anything I could carry. The room seemed to stretch, the walls bending and swaying as if alive. The whispering grew louder, faster, almost taunting me. I ran to the door. It wouldn't budge. I tried the window. It was locked. And outside, the storm raged, a wall of water and wind. The room around me felt like it was closing in, the air thick and hot despite the storm outside. Then I heard footsteps, not mine. Heavy, slow, deliberate, coming from the hallway. I backed toward the bed, my heart hammering. The notebook flipped pages on its own, and I saw dozens of entries, all similar. I stayed. I listened. They came. Do not sleep. Do not stay. Room 7. They are under here. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. The door handle rattled. Something was trying to get in. Suddenly, the bed shook violently, throwing me to the floor. The whispering turned into laughter, high-pitched, cruel, echoing all around me. I scrambled to my feet and grabbed the pen from the floor, waving it like a weapon. Then I saw it. Not under the bed, not in the TV. Behind me, in the mirror above the dresser, a figure, tall, thin, impossibly long arms, head cocked at an unnatural angle. Its mouth opened wide, stretching beyond any human limit, and it whispered my name. I ran. I didn't know where, just out of the room. I slammed the door behind me and ran down the hall, the lights flickering in a staccato rhythm that made shadows stretch like claws. The front desk was empty. The bell hung in the air, trembling. Then I saw him, the man behind the counter. His face had changed, no longer old, no longer human. His mouth opened, wide and wrong, and he whispered in unison with the voices in the hall, "Do not leave. You belong to room 7 now." I turned and ran to the stairs, ignoring the feeling of the carpet gripping at my feet like hands. The outside world called to me, the storm, the rain, but the motel seemed endless. Hall after hall, floor after floor, all identical, all empty. I ran until my lungs burned, until my vision blurred with tears and rain. And then I found the exit, a door to the parking lot swinging open into the storm. Relief hit me, and I didn't look back. I ran to my car, started it, and drove without direction, leaving Amarillo in the memory of that place behind me. Or at least, I thought I did. Weeks later, in my own apartment, I found the notebook again. It had appeared on my desk overnight. The same neat, cramped handwriting. "Welcome back. Room 7 misses you." I never sleep well anymore. Every motel I pass, every flickering neon sign makes my blood run cold. And sometimes, in the dead of night, I swear I hear the whispering just outside my door. I never stay in motels now, because if you do, room 7 finds you. I had been driving for hours, chasing the sunset across the empty stretches of Nevada. My car's gaslight had been on for miles, and every town I passed seemed to vanish as quickly as I spotted it. By the time I finally saw the flickering sign of a motel, the sky had turned a bruised purple, and I was running on pure exhaustion. The sign read, "Silver Sands Motel, Vacancies." It looked old, the paint peeling and the windows dark, but it promised warmth and shelter. I pulled in and entered the lobby. The receptionist was a young woman, maybe in her early 20s. She smiled too widely, her eyes a little too bright. "Room?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Of course," she said. "We have a special tonight. Room 13. It's newly renovated." Something about the way she said special made my stomach tighten, but I shrugged it off. I was tired, cold, and grateful for a bed. The room itself was clean, too clean. The air smelled faintly of lemon polish, and the sheets were crisp and white. I set my bag down and sat on the bed. For a moment, I felt like I might finally relax. Then I noticed the note on the nightstand. "If you hear the music, do not answer." I laughed nervously. Another prank, I thought, some motel oddity. I picked up the note, turned it over, but it was blank. I showered and tried to sleep, but the silence of the motel pressed down on me. Around midnight, I woke to a soft melody, like a music box playing somewhere just outside the room. At first, I thought it was the wind, or maybe a car passing by. Then it got louder. It was a slow, delicate tune, each note dripping with something I couldn't name. I shivered and got out of bed. The hall outside was empty, dimly lit by a single flickering bulb. The music came from somewhere down the corridor, moving closer, yet impossible to locate. I froze. The note on the nightstand replayed in my mind. If you hear the music, do not answer. I considered turning back, hiding under the covers, but curiosity, or some foolish sense of bravery, drew me toward the sound. My feet carried me down the hallway, each step echoing unnaturally. The music led me to the end of the hall, to a door that wasn't on the motel map I had seen at check-in. It was old, wooden, and slightly ajar. I pushed it open. Inside was a small lounge filled with old furniture and a grand piano in the corner. The music played by itself, keys moving as if invisible fingers danced across them. Then I saw them. Figures sitting on the sofas, watching me. They were pale, motionless, and their faces were blank, smooth like wax. They didn't move or speak, but I felt their eyes on me. I stumbled backward. The piano stopped abruptly, the music lingering in my ears like a scream. "Why are you here?" I whispered. The room responded. The figures didn't move, but the piano began again, faster this time. The melody turned discordant, jagged, like it was trying to force me into something. Panicking, I ran, down the hall, back to my room. But the hallway had changed. The doors were all closed, the walls taller, stretching toward the ceiling like a tunnel. I tried the doorknob to room 13. It wouldn't turn. I was trapped. A shadow flickered behind me, tall and sharp-edged, moving in ways that no human could. I ran faster, screaming, heart hammering. Finally, I reached the lobby. The young receptionist was gone. In her place was a note, taped to the counter. "The last check-in never leaves. Would you like to be the next?" I tried to open the front door, but it wouldn't budge. The lights dimmed, the motel groaning as if alive. I realized then that I had walked into a trap, a place that existed outside of normal time. People came for shelter, but some never left. And then I heard it. The music again, coming from behind me, closer this time. I turned, and the figures from the lounge were now lining the hall behind the lobby, pale faces blank, silent, waiting. I ran down the hall, and the walls began closing in. I tried screaming, calling for help, but no sound came out. Panic became a blur, and I felt myself being pulled toward the shadows, toward the music, toward the unknown. The last thing I remember is the piano striking a single note, deep and resonant, as if the motel itself was swallowing me whole. I woke up hours later, or maybe days, I couldn't tell, in a completely different room. The bed was soft, the sheets clean, and a note lay on the nightstand. "Welcome to your stay. Enjoy it. Forever." I realized then that the Silver Sands Motel had claimed me. I wasn't a guest. I was part of it now, another silent figure waiting in the shadows for the next traveler. The music played again, and I felt my body move, my fingers brushing the keys of a piano that wasn't there before. I had checked in, and I would never check out. I was exhausted from driving all day across the Nevada desert. My car's radiator had overheated twice, and every gas station I'd passed seemed closed or abandoned. The sun had just dipped below the horizon, leaving a blood-red streak across the sky. That's when I saw the sign. High Desert Inn, rooms available. It looked modest but inviting, the sort of place where you expect a clean bed and a shower. I pulled in, relieved, and entered the lobby. The clerk was an older man with a thin mustache and a weathered face. He greeted me without smiling. "Room?" I asked. "Single," he replied, sliding a key across the counter. Room 6, checkout is midnight. Midnight, I repeated, curious. Rules, he said shortly. You'll see. I shrugged it off and took the key. The room was small but comfortable, with a bed, a nightstand, and a flickering lamp. The window overlooked the parking lot where the neon motel sign buzzed quietly. I took a long shower and collapsed onto the bed, my eyelids heavy. At exactly 11:45 p.m., I woke to a soft, rhythmic knocking. At first, I thought it was the wind or maybe the old building settling, but the knocking continued, precise and insistent, coming from the bathroom. I told myself it was nothing and tried to go back to sleep, but at 11:50, the knocking turned into a whispering voice. It was faint, almost melodic. Time. Almost up. I froze. My heart pounded. I had no idea where the sound was coming from. The bathroom door was closed and nothing was visible through the fogged glass. I sat up, straining to hear. Then the voice spoke again, clearer this time. Midnight. Check out or stay forever. I jumped out of bed and grabbed my bag. The idea of leaving suddenly seemed urgent, impossible to ignore. But as I approached the door, I realized it was locked from the outside. Panic set in. I pounded on the door, yelling for help, but no sound returned. The lights flickered and shadows in the room began to twist unnaturally. The clock on the nightstand ticked toward midnight at a maddening pace. At 11:59, I heard the key turning in the lock from the inside, but no one was there. I stumbled backward as the bathroom door creaked open by itself. Steam poured out, though I hadn't run any water. And then I saw it. The reflection in the bathroom mirror. Not mine. Not fully. My own face stared back at me, pale and wide-eyed, but with subtle differences. My eyes slightly too large, my mouth stretched into a grin I didn't remember making. My reflection whispered again. Time's up. At midnight, everything changed. The bed seemed to dissolve into shadow. The walls melted into darkness. I tried to scream, but my voice was swallowed. Then a hand, my hand, reached out from the mirror. The cold of it burned as it pulled me toward the glass. I struggled, I kicked, I clawed at the floor, but the pull was relentless. And then I realized the mirror wasn't a reflection. It was another room. A room where someone else, another traveler, was now trapped behind the glass. I screamed as the mirror surface closed over me, solid and unyielding. I could see the real world faintly through it, my luggage on the floor, the clock ticking past midnight, but I could not move. Then the whispering stopped. Silence. Hours later, the next guest arrived, late from the desert. The clerk smiled faintly and handed them a key. Room 6, he said. Checkout is midnight. And inside the mirror, I watched, powerless, as the new occupant unpacked, blissfully unaware of the fate awaiting them. I don't know why I even stopped at that motel. Maybe it was the rain, heavy and relentless, hammering against the highway and turning the asphalt into black glass. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe deep down, I wanted something wrong to happen. The sign read, Maplewood Motel, always open. The word always buzzed in the flickering neon, like it was daring me to come inside. The parking lot was empty except for a single black sedan, headlights off, parked under a cracked street lamp. The motel itself was old, paint peeling, windows dark. I hesitated, fingers tight on the wheel, but the rain offered no mercy. My tires slid over the wet pavement as I pulled into the lot. The lobby was dimly lit, smelling like a mix of damp carpet and old coffee. Behind the counter, a woman sat reading a book. She looked up when I entered, smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Room, I asked, trying not to sound nervous. "Of course," she said, her voice low and smooth. "Room 4, just down the hall. Watch your step." I took the key and moved toward the hallway. The light overhead flickered, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch toward me, crawling along the walls. The carpet was threadbare, damp beneath my shoes. Room 4 waited at the end. I slid the key into the lock. The door opened with a soft click, but the air inside was wrong. It smelled of wet soil and iron, faint but undeniable. I shook my head, blaming the rain, and set my bag down. The room was small, a bed, dresser, TV, and an armchair pushed into the corner. Nothing unusual. Nothing, until I noticed the journal on the nightstand. I flipped it open. The first page read, "Check the walls. Don't listen. Don't look behind the door." A chill ran down my spine. I laughed nervously. Must be a leftover from a previous guest. I told myself it was nothing. I turned on the TV, static. Channels wouldn't change. Then the static began to form shapes, flickering, barely discernible, but faces. Distorted, screaming faces. I yelped and slammed the remote down. The sound of the rain outside suddenly seemed muffled, replaced by another noise, a scratching from the walls, from the ceiling. I stood, heart hammering. The scratching grew louder, rhythmic, almost like footsteps pacing just inside the walls. I checked the door, locked from the inside. That didn't make sense. I didn't lock it. Then the whispers began. Barely audible at first, but unmistakable. "He's here. He's listening. Don't look." I spun around. The armchair in the corner, which had been empty, shifted slightly. A shadow stretched across the wall behind it. I froze. I told myself I was tired, imagining things, but then the TV buzzed again, and I saw something crawl across the screen. A hand, pale, reaching out. I ran to the bathroom, locking the door behind me. The tiles were cold, the mirror fogged with condensation. And yet, as I stared, I saw movement, not my reflection, something else. A figure, hunched and thin, with eyes black as void, staring at me from inside the glass. I stumbled back, hitting the wall. My pulse raced. I had to leave. I yanked the bathroom door open. The hallway stretched endlessly now. No doors, no signs, just darkness. I ran, trying to find the lobby, the exit, anything. The shadows moved around me, twisting and reaching, whispering my name. I turned a corner and found another door, different from the others, heavy, wooden, with scratches along the frame like claws. I opened it and found another room, identical to the one I had left. And in the center, a man, or was it me, sitting on the bed, head in hands. I froze. He, or I, looked up, eyes wide, terrified. "Room 4, he whispered. "You shouldn't have come back." Before I could respond, the door slammed shut behind me. The lights flickered and went out. I was in total darkness, but I could feel it around me, something cold, moving, breathing. The whispers intensified. I stumbled forward, hands out, and hit something solid. A wall. No, a person. The figure from the bed was gone. Another one stood before me, identical, pale, eyes black, and behind them, more figures emerged from the shadows. Panic overtook me. I ran blindly, crashing through furniture that wasn't really there, walls that shifted as I passed. And then I realized, the journal. I grabbed it from somewhere, flipping to the last page. It read, "The motel feeds. Every guest leaves something behind. Every step traps you. Never check out." A metallic taste filled my mouth as I realized the truth. This wasn't a motel. It was a trap, a machine designed to lure travelers and feed on their fear, their panic, their very essence. I screamed, pounding on walls, doors, windows. The shadows closed in. I tried to think, tried to remember anything that might save me. Then I saw it. Room 4. The door appeared ahead, normal this time, solid wood, welcoming, a glimmer of hope. I ran and threw myself inside, slamming the door behind me. Inside, the room looked exactly as it had when I first arrived: bed, dresser, TV. The journal lay on the nightstand, blank once more. I sank onto the bed, shaking. I was safe. I was safe. The TV flickered. I picked up the remote, aiming it at the screen. Static again. And then, my reflection appeared. Not on the mirror, but on the screen. Sitting on the bed, staring back at me with eyes black as void. A whisper. Checkout is over. The walls pulsed, the floor trembled, and I realized I wasn't safe. I was part of the motel now, part of its collection, and outside, the rain continued to fall. The next traveler would see the sign, Maplewood Motel, always open. And I would be waiting, seated on the bed, eyes black, whispering, "Checkout is over." I didn't plan on stopping at the Pine Hollow Motel. Honestly, I had never even heard of it before. The GPS on my phone had died hours ago, leaving me navigating the twisting backroads of northern Arizona by memory and street signs I could barely see in the failing light. By the time I spotted the small, flickering neon sign, Pine Hollow Motel vacancy, my gas tank was nearly empty and the sky had turned a bruised purple gray. I pulled into the gravel lot. The motel looked older than the hills around it, a single-story building stretching in a half circle. Every window was dark, except for a faint, wavering light coming from the lobby. I sighed, thankful for any place to sleep. The front door creaked as I pushed it open. Inside, the air smelled faintly of mildew and cigarettes. A small bell above the door jingled, but the sound felt hollow, as if swallowed by the empty lobby. A man stood behind the counter. He was tall, thin, and wore a uniform that looked decades old, like he'd never left the motel. His eyes were dark, almost black, and when he smiled, the corners of his mouth stretched a little too wide. "Room?" I asked, my voice louder than I intended. "Room 9, he said simply, sliding a key across the counter. "Top of the hall. You'll find it, easily enough." "Thanks," I said, hesitating. Something about his tone felt off, but exhaustion won over suspicion. The hallway was narrow and smelled of damp carpet. The overhead light flickered sporadically, casting long, uneven shadows. Room 9's door loomed at the end of the hall. I unlocked it and stepped inside. The room was small but tidy. A bed, a dresser, a TV on a rolling stand, and a small window overlooking the gravel lot. A faint chill lingered in the air, though the heat of the day had long since faded. I dropped my bag on the bed and ran a hand over my face, trying to shake the creeping sense of unease. After a quick shower, I dried off and lay on the bed, letting exhaustion pull me under. That's when I noticed it. A small notebook on the nightstand, open to the first page. I hadn't seen it when I came in. The handwriting was neat but cramped, the words strangely deliberate. "Do not leave the room after midnight." A laugh bubbled out of me, nervous but mostly incredulous. Some prank from a previous guest. I told myself it didn't matter. I was too tired to argue with a note. The clock on the dresser ticked steadily. Minutes passed. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the window. At precisely 11:55 p.m., I heard it. A whisper. At first, I thought it was the wind or a branch tapping the glass, but it wasn't. It was inside the room, low and guttural, speaking in a language I couldn't understand. I sat up, heart hammering. "Do not leave. Do not leave." The voice repeated, soft but insistent. I froze. My eyes darted around the room. The shadows in the corners seemed thicker, heavier. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe a dream, maybe sleep paralysis, but the whispering grew louder, urgent, almost desperate. Then came the knocking. Soft at first, like fingertips tapping on the walls, then heavier, rhythmic, deliberate. It came from all sides. I stumbled out of bed, heart racing, and pressed my back against the wall. I grabbed the notebook and flipped to the next page. Another message had appeared. The door will not save you. The hallway will trap you. Only stay or vanish. I swallowed hard. My rational mind screamed at me to leave, but instinct told me something worse awaited outside. The hallway, I realized, wasn't the same as when I had arrived. I'd barely paid attention before, but now it seemed impossibly long, stretching beyond any logical measure. The knocking turned into a pounding, then a voice, deeper, echoing like multiple people speaking in unison. Room 9, stay, stay forever. The TV flickered on, static filling the screen. And then I saw it, shadows moving inside the static, forming shapes, figures. They weren't fully formed, but I could see faces, mouths stretching unnaturally, eyes hollow. They stared at me. I bolted for the door, but it wouldn't budge. Panic clawed at me. I ran to the window trying to pry it open, locked. The wind outside slammed against the building, as if warning me not to escape. I turned back, and the room had changed. The bed was gone, replaced by an old rocking chair that moved slowly on its own. The dresser drawers were open, empty, but I could hear something moving inside them, scratching, whispering, faint breathing. A figure emerged from the shadows in the corner, tall, thin, impossibly still. Its face was smooth, blank, but I could feel its gaze drilling into me. I screamed and backed away. The figure raised a hand, pointing at the notebook in my grip. The pages flipped open on their own. New words appeared. You should have left when you had the chance. Now you are ours. I dropped the notebook. It landed on the floor, glowing faintly. The words seemed to burn into the carpet. I stumbled back, feeling the room stretch and twist around me. The walls closed in, narrowing the space until I felt pressed from all sides. I tried the door again. Nothing. The handle rattled, but no amount of force could open it. Then, the whispering began again, louder, all around me, overlapping in layers, like the motel itself was alive and speaking. You cannot leave. Room 9 keeps all who enter. I ran blindly, hands outstretched, only to crash into a mirror that had not been there before. My reflection stared back, but it wasn't me. It grinned, wide and wrong, mimicking my every movement a moment too late. I tried to touch it. My hand passed through the glass. The figure from the corner appeared behind me in the reflection, though nowhere in the room itself. Its hand reached out, and I felt a cold, paralyzing pull, dragging me toward the mirror. I screamed, thrashing, but it was like struggling in water. The pull grew stronger. Then everything went black. I woke up sitting on the bed again. The clock read 11:50 p.m. The notebook lay on the nightstand, blank once more. The room looked normal. I was alone. For a moment, I breathed a sigh of relief. Maybe it was a dream. Maybe exhaustion had played tricks on me. But then I noticed the scratch marks on the door frame. Long, deep, jagged like claws had raked at the wood from the other side. And when I looked in the mirror, I didn't see my reflection at all. Instead, I saw another figure sitting on the bed across the room, pale, thin, grinning. Its eyes were black, and it whispered my name. The door clicked behind me. Locked. I ran to the lobby, hoping someone, the clerk, anyone, could help me. But the hallway had changed again. No doors, no end in sight, just darkness stretching beyond comprehension, lined with silent figures watching from the shadows. I screamed. I tried to run. I fell. The figures were on me, passing through me, brushing against my skin like cold wind. I could hear my own voice echoing back at me from everywhere and nowhere. And then I realized I had become part of the motel. Room 9 wasn't a room at all. It was a trap. Every traveler who came here left something behind, and now I was part of its collection. Hours, days, or years passed. I couldn't tell. Time didn't exist here. The motel pulsed, breathed, whispered, and when the next weary traveler arrived, exhausted from miles of highway, they would see the sign, Pine Hollow Motel, vacancy. And I would be there, waiting on the bed, whispering, "Do not leave, do not leave." Let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one.